The stars in the distance shimmered like tiny diamonds, but for Captain Ji-hwan Kim, they might as well have been distant memories. His once proud ship, the Incheon, now drifted silently through the vast, empty expanse of space. The harsh hum of the engines was the only sound that broke the silence, but Ji-hwan barely noticed it. He was focused on the blinking red lights of the control panel in front of him. They were a constant reminder of his broken life. Once a decorated pilot of the United Coalition, Ji-hwan had been betrayed by those he trusted the most. The very people who had once celebrated his skill in combat and diplomacy now hunted him, like a wild animal. His crime was simple. He had refused to follow orders that would have meant the deaths of innocent civilians on a distant planet, an act of war the Coalition wanted to sweep under the rug. Ji-hwan had spoken out, and that had been his downfall. The same people who had praised his service now called him a traitor. Now, as he glided through the outer rim of the galaxy, Ji-hwan had only one goal left: to survive. Redemption seemed impossible, but he wasn't ready to give up just yet. The Incheon was on its way to Byron 7, a small asteroid colony that had become a haven for outcasts and criminals. It wasn't much of a place to call home, but for someone like Ji-hwan, it was the safest option. The station's location was remote, hidden deep within the asteroid belt, far from the prying eyes of the Coalition. He had been there before, but only briefly, on a mission that had long since ended in failure. This time he had no choice but to return. It was his last hope for a place to rest, to think, and maybe to find a way out of this mess. As the Incheon approached Baron 7, Ji-hwan checked his weapons again. A small plasma gun rested on the seat beside him, a reminder that the galaxy was a dangerous place. Even out here, where no one cared who you were, there were still threats. He didn't want to have to use the gun, but if it came to that, he would. The asteroid station appeared in the distance, a jagged collection of metal and rock. Small ships moved in and out of its docking bays, each one carrying something valuable: drugs, weapons, and occasionally people looking to disappear. Ji-hwan wasn't here for any of that. He needed information. And information in places like this was always for sale. He docked the Incheon in a quiet bay, the ship's engines purring to a stop. As the ramp descended, Ji-hwan felt the weight of his situation sink deeper into his chest. Every time he stepped onto a new planet or station, he felt like a fugitive in a strange, unfamiliar world. No one knew him here, but that didn't make it any easier. He had been a hero once, a man admired by many. Now he was a shadow, a criminal hiding in plain sight. As he stepped off the ship, the sharp, metallic scent of the station hit him. It wasn't a pleasant smell, but it was familiar. He adjusted the collar of his jacket, the worn fabric scratching against his skin. He didn't have time for luxury. He needed answers, and the only person who could provide them was Hana. Hana Lee was not someone Ji-hwan would have expected to find in a place like this. She was a brilliant xenolinguist, someone whose mind had once been focused on the mysteries of the universe, not the dirt and grime of a place like Baron 7. Yet, here she was, working on something that could change everything. The first time Ji-hwan had met her, it had been in a dark corner of a cafe. She had been hunched over a table, scribbling notes on a pad with a focused intensity. Her hair, dark and unkempt, had fallen over her face and her eyes. Those sharp, calculating eyes had glinted in the low light. At first, she hadn't looked up when he approached. He had to speak her name twice before she finally acknowledged him. "What do you want?" she had asked, her voice cold, distant. There was no warmth in it, only curiosity. "I need information," Ji-hwan had said simply. That had been enough to get her attention. Hana didn't ask questions. She never did. She simply offered her help in exchange for something she could use. It wasn't an easy deal, but it was a fair one. Now Ji-hwan made his way through the winding hallways of Baron 7, following a path he had memorized from the last time he was here. He knew Hana would be in her lab, a small room tucked away in one of the station's older sectors. It was quiet there, away from the chaos of the more populated areas, and it was a place where she could focus. When Ji-Hwan arrived, the door to her lab was slightly ajar. He pushed it open without knocking, stepping inside. Hana was sitting at her desk, her back to him, staring at a screen filled with alien symbols. She didn't look up, but her fingers paused on the keys. "You're late?" she said, her voice flat. Ji-Hwan shrugged. "Had a few complications on the way." Hana turned to face him, her expression unreadable. Her eyes were a piercing shade of brown, and her sharp features gave her an air of constant calculation. She was always thinking, always planning. It was one of the things Ji-Hwan admired about her. "I don't have time for your games, Ji-Hwan," she said, her voice dropping to a low, serious tone. "I'm working on something that could change everything, and I don't need distractions." Ji-Hwan hesitated for a moment, then stepped forward, placing a small data pad on her desk. "I think this might help you." Hana's eyes narrowed as she took the pad. She skimmed through the data quickly, her brow furrowing as she read. "Where did you get this?" she asked, her voice rising in disbelief. "It's complicated," Ji-Hwan said, not wanting to reveal too much. "But I thought it might be the key to finishing your research." Hana looked at him for a long moment, then let out a sigh. "I don't know if I can trust you, Ji-Hwan. You've already caused enough trouble." He met her gaze. "I don't have time for trust, I just need a way out. If you want to finish your research, you'll need me, and if you want to finish yours, I need you." There was a long pause before Hana spoke again. "Fine," she said, her voice resigned. "But this doesn't mean I trust you." Ji-Hwan smiled faintly. "I never asked you to." This was just the beginning. The fragile alliance between the fugitive pilot and the reclusive scientist would soon face challenges that neither of them could have foreseen. The station shook with the sound of gunfire. Ji-Hwan and Hana ran through the narrow metal corridors of Baron 7. Smoke filled the air, and warning sirens blared from every speaker. Coalition bounty hunters had found them. Ji-Hwan cursed under his breath as he fired a few shots behind them. The red plasma bolts lit up the hallway. "They found us faster than I thought," Ji-Hwan muttered. "You said we had more time," Hana snapped, clutching a small data drive close to her chest. "I was wrong," Ji-Hwan replied, pulling her into a side tunnel. "Now we run. This way." They sprinted down the path, dodging sparks and broken pipes. Behind them, armored boots slammed against metal floors. The Coalition hunters were well armed, and they weren't here to take prisoners. Ji-Hwan led Hana to a hidden hangar at the far end of the station. His ship, the Incheon, was already warming up. The engines glowed blue, ready to take off. "Hurry," he shouted, helping her climb the ramp. Plasma shots hit the walls near them, but they made it inside. Ji-Hwan hit the close button and the ship sealed shut. Inside the cockpit, Ji-Hwan took the pilot's seat and slammed his hand on the ignition. The ship rumbled, then lifted off. A few shots struck the hull, but the Incheon broke free from the station and shot into space. They were safe for now. In the quiet of space, Hana sat in the co-pilot's seat, still holding the data drive. Her hands were shaking. "That was too close," she whispered. Ji-Hwan nodded. "They'll follow us, but they'll need time to figure out where we're going next." Hana didn't respond right away. She stared at the stars outside the window, her face pale. "You brought them here. If I had stayed alone, they wouldn't have come." Ji-Hwan glanced at her. "Maybe. But you'd still be stuck on that rock working with broken tools and no one to help you. That artifact you're studying? Someone out there is willing to kill for it." Hana sighed. "That's what I'm afraid of." They sat in silence for a while. The stars passed slowly outside, and the ship's systems hummed quietly. Finally, Hana spoke again. "There's an old AI archive near the dead star in Sector Vibe 9. I think we can find something there. Something that connects to the alien artifact." Ji-Hwan raised an eyebrow. "You're talking about the ancient code you told me about?" "Yes," she said. "It's not just a message. It's a map. But the map is incomplete. The last part of the code, maybe the most important part, is missing. I believe the AI archive has it. Ji-Hwan nodded. Then that's where we go. The AI archive floated like a dark cube in space. No lights, no signs of life. It was a grave for forgotten knowledge orbiting a cold, dead star. As they approached, the Inchin's scanners picked up strange signals. Still active, Ji-Hwan muttered. That's rare. Hana leaned forward. That's a good sign. If the AI is still online, it might give us what we need. They docked the ship and entered the station. The air inside was cold and still. Metal walls lined with old wires stretched out in all directions. Dust floated in the air undisturbed for years. Ji-Hwan kept his gun ready. Stay close, he said. They moved carefully through the halls until they reached the central chamber. There, in the middle of the room, stood a glowing console. Hana stepped forward and placed the data drive into the port. The console came to life. A soft light surrounded them and a voice echoed through the chamber. Welcome. State your purpose. I seek information, Hana said clearly. I am Hana Lee, xenolinguist and researcher. I request access to pre-human data concerning the uplift transmissions from the lost species. There was silence for a moment. Then the voice replied, Request acknowledged. Access granted. The walls lit up with ancient symbols and codes. Hana worked quickly, her fingers flying across the console. Ji-Hwan watched her, impressed. She moved like she belonged there. After a few minutes, she smiled. I found it, the missing piece of the code. This is it. But before she could say more, the console's lights turned red. Warning, unauthorized signal detected. Security. Breach in progress. Ji-Hwan cursed. They found us again. Hana grabbed the drive. Let's move. They ran back to the ship as alarms blared. Ji-Hwan started the engines before the ramp was even closed. As the Inchan sped away from the archive, Hana clutched the drive like it was life itself. That's it, she said. The full code, it's complete. Ji-Hwan glanced at her. What happens now? Hana looked down. Now, we have to break into the Coalition's most secure data vault. That's the only place that has the final decryption key. Ji-Hwan's eyes narrowed. That's suicide, you know that, right? Yes, Hana said softly. But it's the only way. Later, in the quiet of the ship, Ji-Hwan made food while Hana studied the drive. Neither of them spoke for a while. Finally, Ji-Hwan broke the silence. You know, I don't understand half the things you're working on, but I believe in what you're doing. Hana looked up at him. You do? Ji-Hwan nodded. You could have left me behind. I could have left you. But we're still here. That has to mean something. Hana smiled faintly. It means I'm taking the biggest risk of my life. He sat across from her. And I'm betting everything on you. The silence between them wasn't cold anymore. It felt calm, safe. For the first time in a long while, both of them felt like they weren't alone. They set a course for the Coalition capital. Ahead of them waited the most dangerous part of their journey. A city full of enemies, a vault guarded by AI defenses and armed soldiers, and a truth that could change the future of all humanity. But neither of them backed down. Hana had the knowledge. Ji-Hwan had the courage. And together, they had one shot at something more than just survival. They had a chance at redemption, and maybe, just maybe, something like love. The Coalition capital glowed like a jewel in the dark of space. It was a massive city planet called Solace Prime, built with shining towers, floating roads, and millions of lives moving in perfect order. But beneath all that beauty, Ji-Hwan knew it was a dangerous place, a city full of secrets, lies, and people who wanted him dead. The Incheon drifted quietly into orbit, using a fake ID code Hana had created. It wouldn't last long, but it was enough to land. We only have 30 minutes before their scanners figure out who we are, Hana said from the co-pilot seat, her voice calm but tense. That's more than enough, Ji-Hwan replied, guiding the ship toward an old maintenance zone on the edge of the capital. Just don't get caught. Hana looked at him. You either. The city was colder than Ji-Hwan remembered. Tall buildings blocked out the sky, and the air was filled with the hum of drones and patrols. He pulled his hood lower and walked beside Hana through the narrow service streets. "This way," she said, leading him down a side path. "The data vault is under the old science tower. I worked there once, years ago, before they erased my records." Ji-hwan nodded. "Let's get in and out before they notice we're ghosts." The science tower stood like a silver needle, stretching high into the clouds. Most people believed it was a research lab, but deep beneath it was something far more dangerous: the Coalition Data Core. Only the highest-ranked officers had access to it. That's where the final decryption key was kept. Hana tapped her wrist device and a map appeared in the air. "There's a side tunnel through the old waste shaft. It connects to the lower security floor." Ji-hwan made a face. "You want us to sneak in through a garbage tunnel? It's not in use anymore, trust me." They moved fast, avoiding cameras and patrol bots. Hana guided them through narrow tunnels and forgotten hallways until they reached a large vent. "This is it," she said. Ji-hwan kicked the panel open and slid inside. The tunnel smelled old and damp, but it was quiet. "This reminds me of the escape tunnels on Juno 5, he said. "Did you make it out alive there?" Hana asked. "Barely. I lost a toe." "Seriously?" Ji-hwan smirked. "No, just trying to lighten the mood." They dropped into the lower level of the vault. The walls were white, smooth, and humming with hidden power. Everything here was guarded by AI systems and auto turrets. One wrong step, and they'd be fried. Ji-hwan crouched near a security panel. "Can you disable this?" "I can loop the cameras and shut off the sensors for a minute," Hana said, working quickly. "But we have to move fast." "Ready when you are," she nodded. "Now." They sprinted through the hallway, past motion sensors and lasers. At the end was a large metal door marked Level Red Access Only. "This is it," Hana said. Pulling out the alien data drive, she plugged it into the console. The door scanned her and paused. "Identity not recognized." "Of course," she muttered. "They wiped me." She took a deep breath and typed a long command. Symbols from the alien code flashed on the screen. The machine hesitated, then clicked open. They stepped inside. The core was beautiful. A giant floating sphere hovered in the center of the room, glowing with shifting lights and streams of information. It was the heart of the Coalition's knowledge, their secrets, strategies, and truths, all kept safe in one place. Hana approached the terminal. Her hands were shaking, but her voice was steady. "I can decrypt the alien map here," she said. "Once I get the key, we'll know where the signal leads." Ji-hwan looked around. "And how long will that take?" 10 minutes. Maybe less." He nodded and took position by the door. "Gun ready?" Hana worked fast, connecting the drive and starting the decoding process. The alien symbols glowed on the screen, shifting and changing as the key unlocked their meaning. "This isn't just a message," she said, eyes wide. "It's a warning, a memory. These beings, they tried to uplift other species, teach them, help them evolve." Ji-hwan glanced back. "Sounds noble." It was. But one of their students betrayed them, turned their gifts into weapons. That's why they vanished. "So what's the message?" She paused. "The map leads to a vault, a place where they locked away their final creation. A last defense, or maybe a last hope." Ji-hwan was about to answer when a sharp beep echoed through the room. Intrusion detected, alerting security. "Damn it!" Hana shouted. He ran to her. "Do you have the data?" "Yes." "Then let's go." They sprinted out as alarms howled. Red lights flashed across the hallways, and drones dropped from the ceiling. Ji-hwan fired at the closest one, blasting it to pieces. Back to the vent. They ran through the halls, dodging drones and autoguns. Ji-hwan led them back through the tunnels, shooting down any threat that got too close. By the time they reached the Incheon, his coat was scorched, and Hana had a cut on her arm. The ship lifted off just as the tower's guns locked on. They barely made it into space before the blasts started. Ji-hwan set the course and hit the warp. The Incheon jumped into light. Later, in the quiet of the ship, Ji-hwan stitched Hana's arm while she held the drive tightly. "You're lucky that cut wasn't worse," he said. She winced. "I'll survive." "You always do." She looked at him, her voice softer. "You didn't have to come with me, Ji-hwan. You could have walked away." He smiled. "You were my only chance. Remember?" She nodded. "And you were my greatest risk." They sat in silence for a moment. Not afraid, not alone, just connected. "So," Ji-hwan said, breaking the quiet. "Where's this alien vault?" Hana opened the map. "It's in the ruins of an old planet, a place wiped from the star charts after the collapse. No one goes there anymore." Ji-hwan leaned back. "Sounds like the perfect place for our next stop." They didn't know what they would find at the vault. A weapon? A key to peace? Or another trap left behind by a lost species? But they both knew one thing: they had come too far to stop now. Together, they would follow the map. Together, they would face what came next. And maybe, just maybe, they would find something more than survival, something worth fighting for. The lost planet had no name. On the old star charts, it was only marked as Sector Z13, uninhabitable. No one lived there. No one visited. The sky above it was gray, filled with ash and frozen clouds. The surface was dark rock and broken. Ruins, as if the planet had once been alive, but was now only a memory. Ji-hwan stared out the window of the Incheon as the ship flew low above the ground. "This place gives me a bad feeling," he said. Hana nodded beside him. "It's dead, but something is still here. I can feel it." They had followed the alien map through light years of space. Now they were close to the end. The map had pointed them here, this forgotten place, where something waited below the Yaik. Surface, Ji-hwan landed the ship on a flat stretch of land near the ruins. Wind howled across the rocks. The air was thin and cold. They wore light suits to keep warm and protect against the dust. "This way," Hana said, holding a scanner. "There's a signal coming from underground." The ruins looked like the remains of a great city. Towers had collapsed and streets were buried in ash. Strange symbols were carved into stone walls. Some glowed faintly even after all this time. As they walked through the ruins, Hana paused at a large stone gate. "This is it," she whispered. "The vault is beneath this temple." Ji-hwan looked around. "I don't see a door." "There's no door. It's hidden. Wait." She ran her fingers along the symbols on the stone. Then she took out the alien data drive and placed it into a small circular slot in the wall. The symbols glowed brighter. The ground rumbled. Slowly, the floor opened, revealing a staircase leading down into the darkness. Ji-hwan pulled out his light. "Of course it's underground." They moved carefully down the stairs. The air was still and cold, but it was dry. The walls around them changed from stone to metal, like the inside of a giant machine. Blue lights flickered to life as they passed. "This isn't just a vault," Hana said. "It's a lab, or maybe a prison." "Or both," Ji-hwan said. "Do you know what's down here?" "No," she said. "Only that the map ends at the bottom." They reached a large chamber. In the center was a tall glass pillar filled with glowing blue liquid. Inside the pillar floated a small object, metal, round, covered in symbols. "The artifact," Hana whispered. Ji-hwan stared at it. "That's what the aliens left behind?" Hana nodded slowly. "It's not just an artifact, it's a seed, a machine that can learn, adapt, teach." Ji-hwan frowned. "Teach who?" "Anyone. Everyone. It was meant to help other species grow, to become more, but it was hidden away after someone misused it." She stepped closer to the pillar and placed her hand on the control panel. The liquid began to drain and the machine slowly lowered into a resting position. Suddenly the lights turned red. A voice spoke from the walls, calm, ancient, and mechanical. "Security breach detected. Artifact awakening. Warning, hostile approach." Ji-hwan raised his gun. What now? Hana's scanner beeped. We're not alone. Something's coming. They turned back toward the stairs, but the path had sealed behind them. Then from the shadows they saw movement. Dark shapes with glowing eyes. Metal bodies. Machines. Old defense drones that had been asleep for centuries. Now they were waking. Up, run! Ji-Hwan shouted, firing at the first drone. The laser hit its chest, but the machine kept coming. Hana grabbed the artifact and held it tight. We can't fight them all. Ji-Hwan grabbed her hand. This way! They ran through a side tunnel, dodging blasts of plasma. The vault shook around them. Stone and metal crashed down from the ceiling. Lights blinked and died. I saw a side exit on the map, Hana shouted, near the lower core. They turned left, then right, sliding under a closing door. Behind them, the machines kept coming. Keep going, Ji-Hwan said, reloading. They reached a chamber filled with glowing cables and broken screens. Hana tapped the floor panel. This is the exit. Ji-Hwan fired one last shot at the drones, then jumped down with her as the floor opened. They fell into a tube that carried them up, faster and faster, until they were thrown onto the surface again. The temple shook behind them. A deep rumble rolled across the land. They didn't stop. They ran to the Incheon, and Ji-Hwan jumped into the pilot seat. We're leaving now, he shouted. The ship lifted off just as the temple collapsed behind them. Back in orbit, Hana placed the artifact. On the table, they both stared at it, catching their breath. What does it do now? Ji-Hwan asked. I don't know, Hana said quietly. But I think it's waiting for someone to talk to it. She reached out and touched it. A light blinked. The machine came to life. A soft voice filled the room. You have unlocked the final key. You are chosen. Will you receive the gift? Hana looked at Ji-Hwan. Do we say yes? He nodded. We came this far. She spoke clearly. Yes. The machine opened. Light poured out. Memories, knowledge, languages, visions of alien worlds. They filled Hana's mind, then Ji-Hwan's. The machine didn't just teach, it shared. It connected. For a moment they saw what the galaxy had lost, what it could become. Then the light faded. They sat in silence. The artifact was now still. But something had changed. I saw things, Ji-Hwan said. Things I didn't understand. But felt. Me too, Hana whispered. This isn't just technology, it's a chance. Ji-Hwan looked out the window at the stars. What do we do now? Hana smiled, tired but full of purpose. We find others. Share the gift, carefully, wisely, one step at a time. Ji-Hwan nodded. Then let's begin. The stars stretched before them, endless, waiting. Together, they had reached the heart of an ancient secret, and now they would choose what to do with it. The next step was theirs. The stars outside the Incheon stretched endlessly, but inside the ship there was only silence. Hana sat at the table, her fingers brushing the artifact, which now sat still, as if it were waiting for something more. Ji-Hwan stood by the window, his thoughts far away. Do you think we made the right choice? Hana's voice broke the silence. Ji-Hwan turned to look at her. I don't know, but I don't think we had a choice. We couldn't leave it there, could we? No. Hana agreed. It's too important, but now we have to figure out what to do with it. The universe, it's not ready for something like this. Ji-Hwan moved to sit beside her. And maybe it never will be. But we can make sure it's used wisely. She nodded slowly, her eyes still on the artifact. It's more than just knowledge. It's a power, one that could change everything. But it could also destroy us. Ji-Hwan took a deep breath. We need to make sure it's not misused. We have to keep it safe. And share it carefully, Hana added. Not everyone will understand it. If the wrong people get their hands on this, it could lead to war. Destruction. Ji-Hwan's eyes hardened. Then we stop them. No one is getting their hands on this. The next few days were filled with planning. They had to be careful. The B coalition would want the artifact. Other powers would want it too, and no matter how far they ran, there was no escaping the reach of those who would destroy everything for control. Jihuan set a course for a hidden location on the edge of the galaxy. A quiet, forgotten place that no one would think to look for them. It was an old research station, abandoned years ago. If they were lucky, it would be the perfect place to hide the artifact. As the Inchin traveled through the quiet corners of space, Hana worked non-stop. She studied the data, trying to understand what the artifact really was. She tried to decrypt more of its code, but it was like trying to open a door with no key. The deeper she went, the more she felt like there was something it was trying to tell her, something she couldn't quite grasp. The ship finally arrived at the station. It was small, just a few old buildings connected by dark hallways. The air smelled stale and the walls were covered in dust. "Welcome to nowhere," Jihuan said with a grin as they stepped out of the ship. "This place is perfect," Hana replied. "No one will find us here." They moved through the station, checking the rooms and securing the area. They couldn't be too careful. The last thing they needed was an unwanted visitor. Hana set up a workstation in one of the rooms. The artifact was placed gently on the table in front of her. She studied it, trying to unlock more secrets. But it wasn't easy. The artifact didn't give up its information willingly. It was slow, methodical. It was like a puzzle, and Hana was determined to solve it. Jihuan, on the other hand, paced the room. He was worried. There was always the threat of someone finding them, but there was something else bothering him. He couldn't shake the feeling that the artifact wasn't just a tool or a weapon. It was something more, a message, a warning, maybe even a test. "I think it's trying to communicate with you," he said after a long silence. Hana looked up from her work, her face tired. "I think you're right, but it's not clear. It's like a language I don't understand, but I can feel it." Jihuan nodded. "It's like it wants something from you." Hana closed her eyes. "Maybe it's waiting for us to make a decision. Maybe it's asking us what we'll do with its power." Jihuan leaned against the wall. "And what do we do?" "I don't know yet," she said quietly. "But we can't keep it locked away forever. If we hide it, someone will find it. Someone always does." Days passed, and the tension only grew. The artifact was a constant presence in the room. Hana couldn't stop thinking about it. Neither could Jihuan. They knew that hiding it forever wasn't an option. But every time they thought about sharing it with others, the fear of what could happen kept them from making a decision. One evening, as the stars shone brightly outside the window, the silence between them was broken by a soft voice. "Will you choose to share what you have learned?" Both of them jumped. It was the artifact. It was speaking to them. Hana stood up slowly. "It's awake. It's speaking to us." The voice continued. "You have unlocked the power to change the future. What will you do with it?" Jihuan stepped forward, his hand hovering over the artifact. "We can't be the only ones who know about this, but we have to be careful. People won't understand." Hana closed her eyes. "I know. I've been thinking about it. We could give it to the people who can use it for good. Scientists, peacekeepers, those who won't let it fall into the wrong hands. But even then, we'd be giving them a tool they may not be ready for." The artifact responded. "The choice is yours. What will you create with what you have learned?" Jihuan and Hana exchanged a glance. It was clear now. The artifact wasn't just about power or knowledge. It was about what they decided to do with it. It was asking them what kind of future they wanted to create. "We have to trust people," Hana said softly. "But we also have to make sure that we're ready. We can't just give this to anyone. We need to find those who understand its potential, its danger, and who can protect it." Jihuan smiled. "And we'll be the ones to guide them. We'll make sure it's used right." The next day, they sent out a signal to a few trusted allies, people they had met along their journey, people who shared their vision of peace. They didn't reveal everything, but they offered the knowledge of the artifact. It wasn't much, but it was enough to start. Hana and Ji-Hwan knew that this was only the beginning. The universe wasn't ready for the artifact yet, but they could help it get there. Together they could build a future where knowledge and power weren't used for destruction, but for the betterment of all. As they watched the stars stretch out before them, Ji-Hwan put his arm around Hana's shoulders. "You know," he said with a smile, "maybe we did make the right choice after all." Hana smiled back. "Maybe, but it's just the beginning." They looked out into the endless space, knowing the road ahead would be hard. But they were ready. Together they could face whatever came next. They had made their choice, and now they would create a new future.